now that we're getting to the meat of the topic. So, you know, the number one question is, how do you attract working coaches? You attract what you talk about. Our guest is going to talk all about that. She's going to talk about 2 types of coach sneak peeks. I'm going to talk about a 3rd type of coach sneak peeks. And really, you just have to kind of trial and error and figure out what works for you. I've actually done all of them, and I kind of hop around depending on what's convenient for me and what I feel like is working at the time and where my audience is coming from. So I think that's really important too. But to introduce our speaker, it is Sarah Young. Sarah is number 23. She's the number 23 coach in Canada. She is a top 250 coach in the United States. She's been a coach, actively coaching for about 2 years. She's been a coach total for about 2.5, but really started coaching 2 years ago. And she is an SC All-Star legend, which means that since she started coaching 2 years ago, she has hit Success Club every single month, and it's been a huge non-negotiable for her. So I want you guys to ask her questions and for this to be interactive and things like that with her at the end. But also Sarah and I were in the Morning Meltdown test group, and I think I've seen her slides for tonight. Her slides, she shows her transformation, and like literally she has one of the best transformations I've ever seen in my life. She just went all in for Morning Meltdown, and just honestly, I feel like goes all in as a coach all the time and is very inspiring. So I'm really excited to have Sarah here to share her story and to talk to us about 2 types of 3 of coach sneak peeks. So Sarah, I am going to stop spotlighting my video and find you.
There, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
There you are.
I usually start out by saying that I am not a public speaker. I was the type of person like in university to skip a class if it had anything to do with performing or presentation or anything. So I tend to talk really fast. So slow me down, ask questions. I really like when people engage. This is my cat who won't, maybe she will leave. She usually just jumps when I present. So yeah, I guess I'll start by sharing my screen. And then present. There. Okay, so that is my transformation. That is my story. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm going to go back a little bit because I think a lot of times everybody has a different reason why they got into coaching. And for me, it was very much about me and my journey. And I actually had no interest in coaching at the beginning. But I'll take you back a little bit before I actually joined. I was someone who tried everything. I, jumped on to everything I could. Weight Watchers, low carb, counting calories. I would spend hours at the gym and just nothing worked. Like nothing worked for me. And looking back, I know I was such an emotional eater, but at the time I just couldn't figure it out. I was like, I feel like I'm doing it all. I feel like I should be losing weight. I should be feeling good. But that person that you see there is completely different than the person I am today in almost every single way. That person just felt so unworthy in life. I was extremely uncomfortable with who I was and where I was going. And I didn't even want to be in public with my partner because I was embarrassed by myself and just who I was. And I remember before I joined as a coach, the night before I joined as a coach, I hopped on the scale. And I will never forget the number. I hopped on the scale. I had been on for a while. I didn't know where I was at, what I was. I hopped on. I was 199 pounds. And I remember just bawling my eyes out and being like, how did I get here? Like, I didn't even recognize the person in that mirror. And I remember Kevin, he's my partner, and he was like, Sarah, I love you, but you need to either like do something about this or change your mindset towards it because this isn't healthy. This isn't helping anyone. And I love him for that because it honestly made me take action. So the next day, literally the next day, I was scrolling on social media and I saw that my coach, Michelle, is also my cousin. I saw that she had joined as a coach, and she had like kind of been doing the programs and the products, and I had seen that she had lost some weight. And so I reached out to her and I was like, what are you doing? Because I want to join. And at the time, I was not interested in the home workout side of things. I was really just looking for nutrition because I was a gym goer, so I didn't need the home workouts. And so she was like, well, sign up with the workouts. It's the cheapest option, you know, with everything. And so I'll add, like at the time I was in school, you know, didn't have the time, didn't have the money. I was paying my way through. So she sent me the price and told me about the coach option and the discount. And I literally signed up that night because I needed to do something. And I remember when I was filling out the coach, purchasing as a coach, I messaged her and I was like, I don't want to coach. Like, if I sign up as a coach, do I have to coach? She's like, no, you can just do it for the discount. And I was like, adamant, like, okay, but I'm not coaching. Like, I don't want to coach kind of thing. And so she actually said, that's fine. And she added me to her, all the coach pages, which I highly recommend you doing for a discount coach, because that was part of the reason I was intrigued by coaching after. So I actually decided to give the home workouts a go. I decided to do, you know, if you're new here, you might not know this program, but it's called Core to Force. It's a 30-day program. I followed the containers. I drank Shakeology. I checked into the boot camp. And it was the first time in my life where I felt like something was super sustainable for me. It was something that I felt that would work for me long term. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I might as well coach. And so I just want to say, like, when I started coaching, I opened up a brand new Instagram account. I was super excited. I was like, okay, I'm going to message all these people. They're all going to join. This is going to be great. Not a single person joined me. Like, not a single person from my friends and family joined at all. Like, not even my mom. No one joined. And I remember thinking, like, well, am I just a bad coach? Like, what does this mean? But I decided not to let it define me. And I actually really love that it's part of my story now, because I can talk to coaches, my coaches who say, no one's joining me. And I can say, that's okay. You can still be successful. Because, you know, honestly, I only recruit cold market people. I always really have. You know, I do have friends and family here and there that come to me now, but it's always been cold market. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to learn how to do this eventually. So let's just start now. So I can't see the chat, so I'll look after. But so yeah, I just kept going. And I actually went to Summit that year as a baby coach. Like, I had not even signed up a single person when I went to Summit. Like, I had the coach as my banner. And I'm really glad I went. And I do think it really is the reason that I'm still here today, because I saw, just, if you've been to Summit, you just know that energy and the trainings and the coaches and the people. And I want to say that, you know, Summit transformed everything for me, but I kind of came back and I was still in school and not really sure what I wanted from coaching. It was still something that I know honestly really held me accountable on my own journey. Oh, my cat, sorry. She's like doing something over there. But I didn't know, I still wasn't like on board with it being like all in. It was going to be my thing. And the thing that really switched for me is, it's going to sound crazy, but I don't know how it is in the US, but in Canada, when you go to apply to grad school, you have to write something called the GRE test, which allows you to apply. Is it the same thing? Yeah. And so I remember studying for it. And I remember just having this moment of, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to pursue this. I'm not interested in anything, even though that had always been my plan. And there was like this tiny voice in the back of my head that was like, well, what about coaching? And at the time I thought it was crazy, because I was an Emerald coach, like, you know, signing people here and there, but it wasn't a huge priority. But I remember like thinking and listening to that voice and being like, okay, I'm not going to apply and I'm going to pursue this. And obviously, like, I still had a few part-time jobs and that kind of thing when I decided to really pursue coaching. And it was really scary to admit, because it wasn't the safe bet, right? Like, it was really just a gamble on myself and I didn't know if, quote unquote, if I could do it. But I was like, that January, so I finished school in December, and that January I was like, well, I have to do this now. Like, I've said I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. which brings me to like, you know, hitting Success Club every single month and making that really a non-negotiable. And that first year, I really was doing all the things. You know, I was showing up, I was following programs, I was hitting Success Club, I was recruiting coaches, but I really glamorized coaching. I really made it seem like so fun, and it is fun. Like I love what I do, but I didn't show the hard work, and I didn't talk about, you know, the fact that when people join, they're going to have to invite. That'll like be more apparent later on when I actually talk about Coach Sneak Peeks. But for that first year, it was all kind of just me. And I had a moment where I was like, you know, I need to seriously go all in with this. So this was like, you know, December of 2018. Yeah, December 2018. And I was like, I always had this, you know, mindset where I was like, if this happens, it would be nice. But I really was like, no, when this happens. Like I really made that switch. And I think, so I'm so sorry. She's like playing with something and distracting me. I really think that was like the biggest thing for me, is making that switch to when this happens. And so I started making PD a huge like requirement in my business, and something that I did every single day, no matter what. And basically like last year, all of last year, January to December, and obviously on now, I've really implemented personal development and making it such a huge priority. And so like people always ask me like, what was it that switched for me? And that was it, like making PD a requirement and really shifting like belief onto myself, because if you don't have belief in this, you don't have anything. And so last year was that year of just like really believing in me. And I hit like the highest SC I didn't even think was possible. I recruited some amazing working coaches, and just, it was really, really great year in terms of just figuring out who I was on social media, figuring out like what I wanted from this, and just believing in me and finding my people. So that brings me to Sneak Peeks. And so before I actually talk about like how I run them and the structure, I kind of want to talk about what you should be doing before you actually run Sneak Peeks. And I'm sure you've all heard this, but it's something called breadcrumbing. So anytime I'm going to run a sneak peek, I always will post a few days before, and I always try to share something about coaching other than my transformation, because, you know, we always share transformations, which obviously is super important, but people already know that they can get that from us. So, you know, share, you know, about how your coach paycheck that week paid for something, or share about, you know, time freedom that it allowed you to have, or share about your vision with this. I think that's also really important, like sharing like why you're coaching and why you're showing up on, you know, days that you're really busy or whatever, and just starting to plant those seeds and yeah, breadcrumbing, so people can kind of like get a feel for what coaching is outside of just your transformation. Another thing that I do too before, okay, taking that from you. Another thing that I do before my actual sneak peek is I talk about it on my story. And this is really where I'm more like focused on who I'm trying to attract. So I will say something like, I want someone who's going to work hard. I want someone who is looking for more. Because I want them to know the kind of person that I'm looking for, right? Like I want them to want to work with me too. And I want them to go into it knowing that there's going to be work. And I think this is super, super important, because it's way more important to recruit coaches that know that they're going to have to work than just recruit coaches. You don't want someone who doesn't realize there's that work. And that's where it comes in, like talking about who you're actually looking for. And again, talking more about like what coaching is doing for you in your stories. And so with that, you know, before I actually run my sneak peek, I'll go back and I will go through my stories, and I'll literally invite any person who you know, engaged on that story or watched that story, and I will invite them to my sneak peek. And I'm so surprised at the amount of people who ghosted me before about boot camps who join, because I'm like, wait, you're interested in coaching, but you weren't interested in a boot camp. But it's just like, sometimes that's what they're interested in. And so like, that's how you invite and get people to join your sneak peek, is by going back and making sure that you're inviting them. So So that leads me to like why we actually run sneak peeks. So the biggest thing that Emily always talks about, and something that really does stick with me, is that you attract what you talk about. So if you're constantly talking about boot camps, you're just going to recruit challengers. And that is so important. And that is something that we are doing as a tribe. And we want to help people. Like, that is our mission. But the way that you really help people is by having an army of people who are helping people. And that's why you want to recruit working coaches. And that is also, to be blank, like to be upfront, like that is where that passive income comes in. And that's how you build your legacy, is by having those people help people. So you can't just talk about boot camps. And also, because a few of my coaches will say to me, like, well, what if people like get annoyed with me always talking about it? And we are way more in our own heads than people are about our lives. Like, I will actually invite people to boot camps and they'll be like, what's a boot camp? And I'm like, I talk about it all the time. But they're just like not involved in our lives as much as we are. So don't be afraid to go on your stories, like honestly, 2-3 times a week, and talk about and share about coaching in a way that it's helped you, or talk about the work that you're doing, because I think this is so important for, like I said, attracting what you talk about and attracting those kind of people. Another reason that I really like running sneak peeks, it's a great way to convert challengers to coaches. So make sure that you're running like amazing challenge groups and seeking people out who are not only engaging in the group, but who are like commenting on people's posts and are being almost like taking that coach role and are getting results and are loving the programs and loving the products. And it's a great way to just quickly say to them, I'm running a sneak peek. You're someone that I think would make an amazing coach. Would you be interested in learning more, and plugging them in? And I think a lot of times we forget about this step. We always think about like new people coming in. But I think it's a great way to convert really good challengers to coaches, because that was me. I was a challenger first, and I was like, oh, there's something here I want to coach. So don't be afraid to ask those people who are doing really well in your challenge groups. And like I said, like share. It's really good to like share what you want in a coach. Be honest about the work. Again, this was my biggest switch in 2019, was not sugarcoating it. I literally would talk about the invites that I would send. I would talk about the amount of work that went into it. And I'll get into more about how I did that. But don't be afraid to be honest about that, because we do want people to know that they have to work at this, because it is hard work, and we don't want them to come into it not knowing that. Okay, so the overall structure, I personally run 3-day groups. You can run 1 day, you can run 5 days. I just feel like 3 days is a good way to capture their attention and get all the information without it being information overload in 1 day. I have stuck to Instagram and Facebook, and I have Instagram highlighted because I typically like to run them on Instagram more. And later on, I'll talk about like the pros and cons for each. But I do most of my recruiting over on Instagram. Like, literally almost 100% of my people come from Instagram. So I find that just works for me better. So I'm going to go into what I actually talk about in these 3 days. So on the first day, I share my story. And the thing I love about this is that I also start to squash objections as I'm sharing my story. So for example, like you heard me say that when I joined, I was in university. So I squashed that time and that money objection. I talk about, I'm very honest. I'm like, I didn't have anybody join me at the beginning, because I want them to be like, well, maybe they're thinking they can't join because they don't know many people, or they're afraid that not a lot of their warm market will join them. And so I'm just saying, like, that wasn't the case for me, but you can still be successful. And so as you're sharing your story, start to squash those objections, and it'll make people, see themselves in your story. Maybe they're, a busy university student and they can relate to that. Here is also, again, where I'm super specific in what I'm looking for and who I'm looking for. And I'm like, I want you to come into this and I want you to work. And if you want to walk and take it slow, we can do that. But I'm really looking for hustlers. I'm looking for people who are going to give this a no matter what attitude. And then from there, I share what we actually do. So I share like, you're going to show up and you're going to do your program that we pick out for you. You're going to work out and follow your meal plan and you're going to get results. And if that doesn't make them want to join, I don't know what will. But then I also share the personal development side of things. And I do share like how that was such a shift for me in my business and just personally, and what personal development has done for me. And then I also share about inviting and how you have to reach out to people. Because again, I want to be so upfront in what we're doing. So then on day 2, I talk about common objections, and I actually like to call them limiting beliefs, because I seriously believe that, again, I believe in my heart that anyone can do this if they want it bad enough. I don't know if Becky's on this call, but she is like the busiest person I know, like full-time working mom of 4, and she shows up on social media like a boss and recruits like crazy. And I'm like, if she can do it, anybody can do it. So I truly do not, I think it's just something that in their own heads, they've convinced themselves they can't do. And so remember that when you're sharing it and you're talking about these common objections. So the ones that I typically share and talk about are time, money. I talk about like, what if you're scared that you don't have a warm market? I also share about not having a huge social media following. And I like sharing this one because you're able to share with them what you're going to offer them when they sign up with you. So if they say, they're scared they don't have a big social media following, you can say, well, no one did. I started at 0 followers, but I'm going to work with you to figure out what your niche market is. And I'm going to help you figure out how to connect authentically to your people and grow your following. So they know that they're not just going to sign up with you and you're going to leave them in the dark. So I like to talk about that one. And I also love talking about not being at your goal weight, which I literally just say, look at my transformation. Like, you don't have to be your goal weight. And I explain why coaching has allowed me to be so accountable on my journey. And I'm like, if you want results, you want to coach. So I also share that one, but I know there are other ones, and everybody's story is a bit different too. So like, if you had one, make sure that you target that, because your people are probably going to have something similar when they are thinking about signing up. And then the last thing I talk about is the fun stuff. So I really do want to cover the nitty-gritty about like what we're doing and our mission, and squash all those limiting beliefs before I talk about this kind of the fun stuff, so that hopefully I can continue to pique their interest, but they know that it's hard work. And so I share the startup costs. So I share like what they're going to get in their bundle when they start. I talk about the fact that it's the same price as a customer. I talk about the coach discount. I explain to them that they're going to have to pay that $15 coach fee, but I also explain why. So I talk about the fact that we don't have to order a bunch of product like other companies do. And that $15 coach fee allows, customer service to help with, returns and exchanges, and us not having to have that product, which is why that fee is there. I also talk about income and how to earn money. So I talk about the 25% commission. I start to breadcrumb stuff like helping 3 people a month. So they know that going into it, that's going to be their goal. I also start to talk about Emerald. And I explain like before, I'm not going to go into it, but your first goal as a brand new coach is going to be the first rank, which is an Emerald coach. And when you hit that first rank, 1 cycle bonus is going to pay for that coach fee. So you don't have to worry about it. And I also do insert that income disclaimer as always, just because, we know corporate's been, about that lately. So I also share that. And I also share my income, and I share my income progression. And I also share like the work that went behind it. And I explain why my income has changed and what the difference is and what I'm doing. So they know if they just want to walk with it, that's fine. But this is kind of what they're looking for income. And again, I always insert the income disclaimer. Okay, so then Instagram versus Facebook. So I kind of talked about at the beginning, I prefer to use Instagram. So I do stick to that 3-day schedule, but I like to also use Instagram because it's a great way for me to get my own coaches involved. So last week I ran a sneak peek and I asked a few of my coaches to make a video and just share their story. And I actually had a girl join me because of it. And she actually said to me, it was nothing that they said. It was just like, I can tell that you love your girls and I want that. And it's like, it allows them to see that relationship. And I think that that's so important. So they know like, what they're going to get from you as a leader and as a coach when they join. And I do love my girls, and I'm glad that they can feel that. So it's something to think about, like when you're running your sneak peeks, to incorporate, you know, whether or not it's your coaches, maybe other coaches' stories, because you have to remember, like, our followers know a lot about us. And sometimes, you know, hearing from another coach on your team who, you know, maybe you don't work and they work, you know, hearing another person hearing that might help them join, because they're like, oh, I can do this. I have a full-time job or whatever, and they can see themselves in your coaches too. So I like Instagram because it's easy to ask people to follow the account. Super easy to just, you know, invite them to the sneak peek and be like, here, you know, here's the Instagram handle, you know, feel free to share it. I'm going to go start talking. That's really weird. I'm going to start talking next week. And so it's easy for people to just quickly follow. And also I find that, you know, people love easy. So that's why Instagram has been good, because it allows them to just quickly follow it. I also like it because there are so many like different ways to share it. So you can, you know, every single day with your different topics, you can either just talk in your stories, you can go live. I've been doing IGTVs and I really liked it because of the 10-minute cutoff, because I tend to just talk and ramble, and I love that it like stops me at the 10 minutes, because I think it can only be 10 minutes when you upload an IGTV. And one thing I did last week, which was super helpful, was when I was talking about the different objections, I actually did a video for each. So if someone is like, I don't know, like they're worried about time, they can go watch my 2-minute video, not my 10-minute video where I talk about everything. And so there was actually a girl where I just like tagged her and I was like, listen to this, so that she can quickly just listen to that one objection. So I like doing that. So Facebook is how I used to recruit and how I used to do it. And I liked it, but I found that people who joined would be more serious about it, right? Because it's harder to join, you know. But the only problem is like that group can get lost. So unless they're like really super, you know, serious and passionate and want it, and they're going to seek it out, it's easy for them to just join and forget about it. It's easy for them not to catch your lives. And I find personally for me, when I would go live in my Facebook group, I would just ramble. I would just talk and talk and talk and be like, oh, that's a 30-minute video. And unfortunately, like, people's attention spans are so small, they're probably not going to sit there and watch a 30-minute video about your story. So that's kind of why I like Instagram, because it has those time parameters. I did find that Facebook was better to get people more engaged, because, you know, they can comment, and you could do like an introductory post where they go and introduce themselves. And in Facebook in general, it's just more intimate. So I found that when I did run it over there, I did find quality people, but it just, for me, wasn't as good. Again, I just recruit more people from Instagram. And so I like that way better. But I did actually run... A few months ago, I ran one on each, and I found a girl and I recruited someone from Facebook. So it's not dead. It's just, for me, not as great. So before Heather talks about the Zoom calls, I just wanted to give you a few tips and tricks for when you're running your sneak peeks. So again, less is more. I know like I'm rambling and talking a lot right now, but the more information that you can provide in like a smaller amount of time is going to be better. You know, I found that people like 2-minute videos as opposed to 10. People like shorter, and they want all the information. And so don't be afraid to make a short video, and don't be afraid to just say it how it is and not go off on tangents. Again, don't be afraid to mix it up. So ask your coaches to make some videos, you know, find different ways to do it. Ask them questions in your stories. You know, ask another coach to run it with. Just always be thinking outside of the box in ways that you can mix it up. And also, if you're nervous, good, do it anyway. I remember my first sneak peek was absolutely terrible. It was the first time that I had ever gone live, and I was just a wreck, like nervous, like just, I don't even want to watch that video. I don't know where it is, but it's bad. And it honestly took me probably 5 or 6 sneak peeks until I actually recruited someone. So just don't stop, keep going. And it's okay if you're nervous about it. It's okay if it feels weird, but that is seriously how you're going to find those working coaches. One of my girls joined the sneak peek after I invited her to a million boot camps, and she ghosted me every time. And I saw that she had joined a sneak peek, and I was like, okay, she's interested in coaching. And she signed up and ran with coaching. So you never know what people want, and we can't choose for them. So Heather, do you want to take it away with Zoom calls?
Yeah, I was still muted. All right, yay. Okay, let me go back to Spotlight. And do you mind can you stop sharing your screen now? I didn't make slides. Okay, wow, that's myself really big and I don't like it. Okay, before I get started on the Zoom portion, I wrote down some questions for you that I feel like maybe the girls aren't aren't going to ask, but I feel like is probably on the back of our minds. So I think some of the questions are coming in on chat. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat and I'll make sure to ask Sarah those questions too. But my first question is, you said that when you started coaching, and I love that part of your story because I think that is such a limiting belief for so many people, that I don't have any followers and that kind of thing. And nobody in my warm market, nobody's joining me, nobody's saying yes. And so I love that that's part of your story. So my first question for you is, being completely brand new to Instagram, how did you grow your following and engagement and that cold market? How do you attract people? Because to me, it's a lot harder to attract strangers on Instagram. I think you kind of have to step up your photography game and really add value. So how did you grow your following on
Okay,
Instagram?
yeah. So keep in mind, when I joined, it was a couple of years ago, right? So Instagram has really changed. But when I started, and if you go on my page, it's awful. Like, my posting is awful. I'm a poster child for Beachbody. But it was using hashtags, and it was honestly spending 15 to 30 minutes and going out and finding my people. So you all have heard of the 5-3-1, but that is literally what I did at the beginning. I would just go out and find people like me. And obviously, at the beginning, I would target all the wrong accounts. I was targeting fitness people, and that's not what you want to do. You want to target people that, you can connect with outside of just coaching. So I'd go on a lot of Bachelor contestants. That's my love. I love The Bachelor. So I'll go on Bachelor contestants, and I'll go to their most recent photo, and I'll go through and follow and engage with those people. But at the beginning, it was mainly hashtags. And I know that's not super helpful because I know social media has really changed. But I would also just make a point of always engaging with the people who did follow me, because I really wanted them to know that I was a real person. So I really wanted them to feel connected with me and feel that I genuinely cared. So when I popped up in their inbox inviting them, it wasn't so cold. And I think, so I actually do have a psych degree. I graduated with a majored in psych. And I think that honestly does help me with connecting with people that I don't know. I'm really good at conversations, even though I'm extremely introverted. I'm good on the phone with connecting with people outside of just, Beachbody, and inviting them to boot camps by taking that time to comment on their photos and just show them genuine love and respond to their stories. And again, just show that I'm real. And so it's taken a long time to get to where I am. But I hope that was helpful. I feel like it's common, everybody's going to say this, but
super helpful. And I love how you talked about with the hashtags. And I think sometimes we expect there to be this answer for Instagram engagement that's this magical secret that somebody else is doing, but there isn't a magical secret. You said 15 to 30 minutes, and I assume that's daily, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I think sometimes we forget to do it daily in a power hour, and do it weekly and that kind of thing. And I think it's so important, especially now with the way that Instagram will throw you in jail and that kind of stuff. A little bit every day is what's going to count and not get you in jail. Cause I don't think you can do batch following hundreds of people like you could. I think the coaching landscape has changed, and we can talk about the good old days as much as we want. You could use third party apps or companies and things like that, and just Instagram has totally changed the game. So I agree with that. And I used to kind of have a chip on my shoulder about hashtags because I feel like it was other coaches, but honestly, I feel like hashtags are making a comeback. because that's how people are finding people now. But the hashtags, making sure that it's 15 to 30 minutes daily. If you guys don't know what 531 is, it's you like 5 pictures, comment 3. And like Sarah's saying, not just like, hey girl, love your sweater, like really kind of let them know that you care and relate in some way. For me right now, my people in my jam are other people who are pregnant. So I'll say like, I'm due whatever, and like rainbow, like moms who have experienced loss and that kind of thing. So 531, and then the 1 is you either follow them if you don't, or if I'm already following them, then I'll send them an invitation with that. But what else? You also talked about, I like have pages of notes, by the way. I'm going to, like you should copyright this, your if win switch. So I love when you talked about your mindset from going, if this coaching thing works out, if I'm good at coaching, to when it happens. And so I love your if win switch. And you talked about personal development being the key. And I love that you said that, because normally when coaches are like, I'm doing all the things, nothing's working. And I think they hate when I ask this, but my number one question is, what are you doing for personal development? And then it's usually like, well, I'm kind of doing this, I'm kind of doing that. And it's not dedicated to anything. So can you tell us maybe your top like 3, what are some of your favorite things to do for personal development?
So I don't know if you guys know him, but Brad Bizjack is honestly like what changed my mindset. So he spoke on a call for us, I don't know, like October of, I'm getting my years backwards now, October of 2018. Yeah. And I remember just being so moved by him. And so I honestly signed up to do his course, and it was a very expensive course, and it made me show up and it made me do it. And his course is really good because it really is about belief, and it's about just believing in what you have to offer and who you are and what you're doing. And I was just constantly feeding myself that, because I honestly think that there's no, like what Heather said, like you can be doing all the things. And I honestly I was doing all of the things for that entire year, and I didn't have a single working coach. And I remember thinking like, what am I doing? Like, why can't I find these people? But I was like, you know what, if I'm not in it, how can I expect to recruit someone who's going to be in it? And so that didn't answer your question, but Brad Bizjack, sorry. Brad Bizjack is honestly what changed my life in terms of personal development and mindset. And he does have a podcast. So, go listen to him and see if it's something that you'd be interested in, because it really did help me. Also, just taking a step back and truly appreciating what coaching had done for me. We have all of these huge goals, huge rank goals, huge income goals, but sometimes we just need to take a step back and realize like that paycheck that you got that might not have been as much as you wanted, was still a paycheck. This platform allows you to show up every single day. Like, think about the person that you'd be without this. And that really helped me with showing up and finding those people that were just like me. And again, believing in this, because I really do not know where I'd be without this. And that entirely scares me. And so it makes it so much easier to show up. But again, I'm not answering your question. Brad Bizjack.
Well, you're doing it amazingly. And it's crazy because I remember like that, we have calls every week, but I remember that call and I took it. And he's very like, he paints pictures and that kind of thing. And I literally remember where I was sitting. Like, I think I remember how the air smelled around me that day. And you guys, I can hear it in your voice, like the Brad effect. He's all about gratitude and positivity. So what you just heard Sarah talk about, like, you don't hit the goals, or your paycheck's not as big, or you don't get the rank or whatever. Think about your life and how it's changed and all of that. And so I highly recommend him too. I'm going to try to find the recording for that and post it in the Fit and Fancy downline, because that was, he is incredible. And you heard too, Sarah, not only did she find someone that she liked, but she invested in her mindset. So I think, that I think is big. Not saying that everybody has to go out and invest in some expensive course, but like if you find somebody that speaks to your soul, like sometimes it's worth investing in yourself. So I love that you did that. I'm going to look at the chat, and I'm going to talk because Sarah honestly covered it. She talked about Facebook and Instagram sneak peeks. I think the important thing to evaluate is like where your audience is. So Sarah's talking about, you know, most of her audience is coming from Instagram, and that's where she's grown the most, but she's tried both. So I would encourage you to, you know, if your audience is coming from Facebook, you should probably do a Facebook one. Keep it where it is, but also try Instagram. You know, those of us that are in this first quarter Olympics, like it's points to do a sneak peek right now. So try one every week on a different platform. But Facebook is what I started with, and I just and that's what I just kind of emulated what Emily did, and I think Sarah and I probably kind of did the same thing, and what the network did. If other coaches I see are trying something new, then I'm kind of willing to try it too. But I started also Facebook and would do, I think Emily did 5-day sneaks in the beginning. And I think just as times change, like attention spans get smaller. And so the 3-day sneak peek was a sweet spot for me as well for a while. And then for Instagram, like Sarah talked about, you know, you can do IGTV, you can do mine. I think I did stories and then save them to highlights. But also now people are doing what Sarah's talking about is in like IGTV, it'll go to your timeline or like your actual feed, and you can upload videos for like just that little, I love the idea of the objection. So like time or whatever it is. And so that person doesn't have to watch the whole day, but you can tag them in the time or the money or belief or whatever it is. So I wrote that down. I absolutely love that idea. I know Heather Demers, I don't know if you're on, but Heather shared in the Fit and Fancy downline page, kind of, she does Instagram sneak peeks very similar. And she does Instagram sneak peek and Zoom. So like I love with Instagram, it's there. So like even in the interim, when you're not running a live sneak peek, you still have somewhere to send people with that Instagram sneak peek, whether it's IGTV or stories saved in there. All I'll say with the Zoom sneak peek is I started doing those. Emily does those now too. I had tried the Instagram. I feel like I get a lot of other coaches on Instagram sneak peeks. And so for me, Zoom, I have them go to my website, and I have a what is coaching page that, like Sarah said, is one of the mistakes I made my first year also was glamorizing coaching. And so I would say I built this business in the car rider line and in pockets of time, which was the absolute truth. But pockets of time meant like every waking second that I had not like doing my priorities and working. And so I think it's really important to not glamorize, like, you know, I mean, you can glamorize freedom and stuff like that, but also glamorizing the hustle a lot too, and being very real about who you're looking for, like Sarah said, and what it takes. But I now do a Zoom where they fill out the coach application. You guys can go to my website and look and see. If you click on join me, and then it says like what is coaching or something like that. And I'm very clear on that page who I'm looking for and what it takes. And then after they read all of that, then they can fill out a form that asks them questions like, how much do you want to make? What would that do for your family? Why do you want to coach on my team? That kind of thing. And from there, they get a private Zoom link. And then I will do, so like a 1-day sneak peek, I do a 1-hour webinar essentially. All of those things that Sarah talked about, I just cover within the 1 hour. And I also record it, and I have all their emails from the form. So after the Zoom call, they also get the recording. So like, hey, if you couldn't make it onto the call, here's the recording. And then I follow up via text message, because I feel like in recruiting coaches and Emily does the same thing with text messages for coach recruitment, because I think coaching is just it's more of an intimate thing. So I think all of the different types of sneak peeks are very, very similar. But I would try them all. Try the 5-day, try the 3-day, try the 1 hour, try it Facebook, try it Instagram, try it Zoom. And also, so I'm looking in the questions, and this was the notes, kind of the stuff that I want to leave you guys with And I know some of you guys probably have to hop on. I want to be cognizant of time, but I am going to ask questions on here. But do it no matter how many people are on. I know Nicole said the first sneak peek she did, nobody showed up. Still to this day, I have hosted the 1 hour webinar for Zoom, and my husband will come up here and we'll do it together. So if you have like a skeptical spouse or partner that's on board now, have them, like Emily will have Dylan pop on it for a day. And I know that was really impactful for me. So Brandon will come up here at the end of the sneak peek, and we've hosted them before where not one single person is on, or it's like all of my coaches on learning how to do sneak peeks and like one new person. And so, you know, the months are going to fluctuate, but do them no matter what. I think Nicole said that. So important. Just know as a coach, maybe people aren't going to say yes right away. No, when you start doing sneak peeks, you may just have to fail forward until you find your method of coach sneak peeks. Holly asks, how long do you spend on each day? Do you follow up with the people in your sneak peek? So I guess she means like your 1, 2, 3. How long are those each day? I think you said 10 minutes, right? Because it's IGTV.
Yeah. So like my story is usually like 10 because I ramble, and then I'll do another video that's like what I'm looking for and what we actually do. So again, I try to keep it under 10 minutes. And then you asked like if I follow up with them. I actually do what you do, and I send voice memos, and I find that works a lot better because it's a lot more personable, and people are like, wow, thank you for thinking of me. Like, because I use their name, and I'm like, talk about like, I was super excited when I saw you join. Again, and you use voice memos, so I know you know, but just so they really feel that excitement and you wanting to work with them.
Yeah.
And I find that works well.
I love the voice memos, but I get in there, like in the form, I say your cell phone number in case I got that from Emily, in case I choose to contact you that way. And so I've been following up for Coach Sneaks via text message. And I think people, it kind of stops them wherever they are in the day. And I've had like usually people are like, I want to think about it or whatever. And you got to email them back and forth a couple times. And I feel like the text message really stopped people in their tracks. And I had people for December and January that joined right away. And a lot of them have already gone Emerald and are on that. Those are the names that are on the road to Success Starter. So I know it like, at first I was like, I don't know. I don't want it to be an invasion. Like, I don't know what they're doing during the day, but I think it was more like, hey, she's thinking about me in the middle of the day and followed up. So I think voice and text takes it to a whole nother thing. I think Megan kind of asked a repeat question. How did you grow your following? Did you use an app? She talked about the 531 hashtags, places. Also, I'll say find your 5 I think it's in the Coach University training, but we talk about it all the time. Like how Sarah said she would go to Bachelor contestants because she loves that show. I do the same thing. Like I'll go to seasons that I watched like back in the day and not even the new people, because those are like my older mom tribe. No, so what was it? It was like Ben and Lauren that season. Like I loved Lauren, and I feel like I get a lot of my tribe from that season.
I get a lot of people from Jade.
So anyways, but like whatever your thing is, like Sarah may go to Cats, or like I may go to Cavapoos, or whatever your life is, and like I guess it doesn't matter. So those of us that have been coaching for a couple years now, it doesn't really matter how we grew our following back then. It just matters that stuff doesn't work anymore. And the thing that is going to work is the slow, methodical, daily action of following and connecting and engaging. Let's see. What do you do for the posts in Instagram? Do you use pictures with a caption, or is it a caption on the picture? Stephanie asked that. I think she does a little bit of both, right?
Yeah, I've done both. Yeah. For the objections, I'll do something like time, so they can like go on the page and read it right there.
Yeah.
And other times I'll like post my face or, a picture of the community. Oh, I also didn't mention this, which I should have, but I also really like to run sneak peeks after events. Yeah. So, after Summit or after Super Saturdays or, Disney, I find that really helps because people just saw you on a trip or with the community or whatever it is. And I find that's been helpful for getting people excited about coaching and wanting to join that sneak peek. So that's just something to think about, for events that are coming up.
Yeah, same. that's for me, like when you go on the sixth, and that's a point, if you haven't gotten to events, like get your butt to events. Like the Super Saturday, I think Super Saturday was my first event, and you take the pictures of working out, and that's kind of your first opportunity to talk about the community. Getting to Summit, earning the team retreat. She just talked about Disney. I take my girls to the beach, being a part of that. Because I've had girls that have messaged me while I'm at trips and say, I want to be there. I don't even know what you do, but I want to be there next year because it looks like so much fun. And some of my most successful coaches have come from girls that saw the fun and the community on the trips, that like they know they want to hustle for that. So that's a huge point. Get to events. And then when you're at events, start talking about if you're on the Success Club trip in Punta Cana, like start talking the last day or so that you're there. Have your coach sneak peek date set with your swipe up or your drop the email or whatever, and go ahead and start gathering emails and people for that sneak when you're already at the event. That's huge. Jennifer asked, and I'm interested to know this too, do you keep the Instagram in the highlights and just keep your highlights, or do you take the highlights down and redo them every month?
So I did that at first. I would talk in my stories and I would highlight them. And then when I was about to run a new sneak peek, I would just delete all the highlights. But I actually have left them up this time because I ran it the last week I ran it with IGTV. So I just was like, well, if they really want to hear it twice, they can. And I had so for example, I've had some of my girls talk on the stories. So I leave that up just so they can go back and look at my girls. I had Emily one time share her story, so that's still up. So I guess to answer your question, I do leave it as a highlight, but if I'm going to ever go in and talk on my stories again, I'll delete them and re-highlight them.
That's really good. That's where I have my highlights now, but they're from my beach retreat last year. So I think it's time. I think you could leave them for a point in time, and then I wouldn't redo it every time, but maybe quarterly redo those highlights.
Also think about it, sorry to cut you off, but in your Facebook groups, like how I run them on Facebook is I keep the same Facebook group and I'll just go through and delete all the videos, but I'll leave them up for a while until I'm about to, start a new one, just so, if anybody wants to go back and watch them. So that's kind of the same idea with the highlights, in my opinion.
Yes, same. And I think too, for me, the Zoom that I did with my husband was really helpful because, like I said, at the end of 2019, I wasn't running sneaks every month, but like when Jack broke his arm, so pet and dog lovers, like I had a post that talked about like how expensive the vet bills were and how that would have been an extreme emergency financially for us had I not been a coach. And I feel like and then I had a post when Brinley did ballet this year, and it was like, we didn't have to stress about the costumes. If you were like Dance Mom, shout out, it's not cheap. And so like we paid for the year, we paid for her costumes, we paid for her recital fees. It was like my coaching paycheck that week paid for her whole year of ballet. And I kind of like Sarah's talking about, breadcrumbed a story that I remember growing up hearing my parents talk about, like how stressed they were about money, and I felt like a burden because of ballet. And my post was about like, my daughter is never going to feel like a ballet burden in her life ever again. So when Sarah you attract what you talk about, and so I wrote down to breadcrumb what your paycheck does. So you guys, I was like the worst coach ever, and in the beginning I remember my first like $600 paycheck. I went to I'm not saying, please don't do this, but I went to the bank and asked the cashier girl for $100 bills, and I fanned it out and took a picture. Don't do that. But I did talk about money early on in terms of assigning it something. So like if your paycheck pays for getting your nails done and you haven't gotten your nails done in a long time, or your hair or your groceries, or just a date night with your partner or whatever it is, start assigning value to your paycheck. Even if your paycheck was $50, like assign value to, and start talking about the paycheck. Start talking about time freedom. Even when we did the first quarter on Friday, our power hour, we all took a picture on noon Friday because we either had time freedom or we were going to create it for ourselves. So time and then vision for the future. Like a lot of coaches are like, well, I don't have an income progression like you. I don't know what to talk about on my coach sneak peek. Talk about what you want to do with coaching. And that was a limiting belief for me for a long time, because I have a full-time job and I was so afraid to talk about my vision for coaching because I was afraid like, well, I'm going to get fired because they're going to think I want to quit teaching for coaching. And I've just learned to talk about coaching in a way that I talk about the freedom to choose. So like, you know, my vision now is to be able to be a teacher and be a nice teacher because I'm there because I want to and not because I'm there to collect a paycheck. And I think that's been really powerful as well. I feel like I've started attracting like working women that are like, you know, maybe I don't want to quit my job right now, but I like the idea of being able to choose one day down the road. Let me see if I have any other questions. I don't really know what that question's asking. Do you add, follow, or just message when sending invites? I'm currently doing both, but trying to also see what others do. I don't really know what that question means. How do you follow up via text if you're in a country? As a Canadian, I have issues texting people in the US. Wondering how to tackle that. I mean, I think you could just voice, like she's saying, you don't have to text, you could voice memo.
Yeah, so if you don't want to text, you can just, stay on Instagram. I mean, I have an international plan now because of coaching, and you can write that off. So that's why I got it. Ultimately, was to be able to connect with people in the US. And honestly, a lot of people just have iPhones, so you'd be fine anyways.
Okay. And we're like 9 minutes over, but this is so good. I don't like, if you're good, then I'm good.
Yeah, I also just want to add one thing, because my coaches say the same thing about income, right? Like they're like, well, I only made this, or I'm not where I want to be yet. And I think it's like easy for us to think that it's not enough. But remember too, like when we tell someone a challenge pack is $160 and they think that's expensive, turn it around and think, what could $160 do for that person every single week? And don't discount what you're making and what you're doing just because you're not, quote unquote, where you want to be. That $100, $200, $300 could be so impactful for someone. And honestly, sometimes it's hard for people to conceptualize a bigger paycheck, right? It's like kind of like sharing your transformation. Like my big transformations, I'm sure people, because I know I felt the same way when I would see that, I'd be like, so wow, intimidated. But when you share that like smaller, small increments, a lot of people can relate to that and be like, oh, like that $100 could pay for groceries. That $100 could just pay for these shakes. So don't be afraid to share that because it is important, and people like that's going to resonate with some people.
Yeah. And I think too, like coaches that have the larger ones, or we've been doing this for a while, there comes a time and it's just a matter of not letting limiting beliefs get in your head, to be honest, because I have the opposite problem, and people are like, well, I don't like that's great for you, but it doesn't feel relatable to them. So like, I think if you're a new coach and you have those small wins, that is more relatable and you're in a great place. So just don't look at things as limiting beliefs. There are some questions about private Instagram accounts, and I don't know if you want to take that one or I can, but I tend to follow private Instagram accounts. If they're on that hashtag or they're a part of the tribe, because if somebody has a private Instagram account, they're most likely not a coach or in another MLM. So I don't shy away from private accounts, and I'll follow them and then they follow me back. And if they're not a coach, then they get an invite. I'm just really unapologetic and I don't overthink the process. And I think Sarah probably does the same thing.
Yeah, no, I'll just follow it if it's private. I mean, I do try to do open accounts just so I can do the like engaging and stuff, but I'll just follow it. And once they follow me or accept it, I'll go and love on them.
Yeah. Well, and you can't like the 531, if they have a private account, you can't 531 private accounts. So you do need to be strategic on who you 531 is either going to be current followers. Because 531 is really time consuming, I tend to save 531 for coach prospects. So I don't 5-3, like what Sarah's saying, you recruit what you talk about. I don't 5-3-1 and spend my time on boot campers. Like they can join through the transformation pictures or when I talk about dropping emojis for my next boot camp. I spend my time if you want to step up, be a leader, be a star diamond, whatever, you're going to spend your time on coach prospects. So your followers, your current challengers that you feel like are part of your tribe and would work hard and make good coaches. Let's see if there maybe one more question. Okay. Nope. I think that's it. Thank you so much for that. I feel like this was super, super helpful.
Thanks so much for having me.
Not just for sneak peeks, but just coaching in general. Your story has been super relatable. And I think so many of the things that you talked about are limiting beliefs of brand new coaches. And you have just, I feel like, squashed any and all objections and just proved that with consistency, belief, I love your mindset, belief, and gratitude. And when you're in it for the long game, and I love the fact that you've made Success Club. I know you talked about it on the Success Club call in January, but the fact that you've made Success Club a non-negotiable every month. And I think you said something like, you know, it really, like, once you started doing it, it just wasn't, you didn't make it a big thing. Like, you didn't make it hard because you didn't.
It's something I do. It's like, it's just something you do. Just
right.
Like taking your shake and working out, you do it. Like, it might take you all month. It might take you the first day, but you do it.
And I love what you said about, like, you didn't go for Success Club 6, you go for 10 or 50. And then if you don't hit that, like, it's fine. So I just thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and mentality and busting every limiting belief that any coach could ever have. I'm obsessed. And
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. So. Yeah, she's the star. It's fine.
Thank you. All right, I'll post the recording in both pages. So I'll see you guys soon.